The topic of this workshop is Who's an Addict and What is NA? I would like to introduce you to our first speaker, and our first speaker is going to be Bill S. Can you help me welcome Bill?
Bill. Do I speak in here or
Where do you want?
Hey family, can you hear me? Okay. I'm Bill, I'm a grateful recovering addict. And, first and foremost, I want to thank the God of my understanding and for God's grace and mercy, and for pulling me out, of the muck and the mire, of active addiction. And I'm always grateful for that, every day. It wasn't, like we say, recovery is a gift, and it was a gift, that I truly believe that I didn't deserve it, if I got what I, like people talk about karma, you know what I mean? And the gifts that I've got in the recovery have changed my outlook on karma, you know what I mean? Like, so, yeah, that's, but, like, who is an addict, I live to use and use to live, the disease of addiction took me places I didn't really want to go and made me stay, longer than I wanted to stay, and I did things I didn't really want to do, and things happened to me that, that I really didn't want to happen, but, it says our whole life and thinking was centered in drugs, you know what I mean, in one form or another, and, there was a time, before I started using, that, and we say that our message is that, an addict, any addict can stop using drugs, and lose the desire to use, and find a new way to live, and I believe that, our literature was, divinely inspired, you know what I mean? In the first book that was written, it says, God, help us write according to your divine precepts, so that this work can truly be yours, and not ours, in the spirit of loving service, and so, yeah, I truly believe that's written that way for a reason, and I'll just give you a little bit of my background, like I believe, my truth is that, I even as a little kid, I felt disconnected, didn't feel a part of, didn't feel a part of my family, didn't feel like anybody loved me, and I was always sneaky. I was a sneaky little kid, I remember, my mother, my father left when I was like 4 years old and never really had a relationship with him. And my mom remarried when I was like about 6 or 7. And, I learned to sneak around, and find where the good stuff was, And at 6, 7 years old, it was like, in my stepfather's bottom drawer, he had the Playboy magazines. And I'm 6 years old, you know what I mean? I don't know nothing about nothing, But I got a feeling, not a sexual feeling, but an emotional rush from looking at these pictures, And then, I proceeded to the closet where he had the Heineken bottle, full of silver coins, and I learned how to steal. You know what I mean? And I learned how to live, keep these things secret, and I used to steal the money and go down. I lived like a block from the bay, and they had a little sugar shack with pinball machines and, hot dogs and stuff and jukebox, and that's where all the kids hung out, you know what I mean? And, I wanted to be cool. I had my little Stingray bicycle, and I would stash the quarters and stuff, in the handlebars and go down there and play the pinball machines and, and treat people. Yeah, play some pinball, play the jukebox so like I started, having behaviors, that I didn't have concern. You know what I mean? I didn't think like I'm taking somebody's money. You know what I mean? Like they work hard for, and I just didn't have a connection, and I remember in high school the kids were starting to take pills and I wasn't doing that, but I always had low self-esteem, and things that were said to me, I wasn't connected to my family and my brothers and sisters, and and I used to love to eat, my brother and sister, we would mentally abuse each other, and they were twins, so they would team up on me. I was the youngest, and they would mentally abuse me, and my stepfather would, mentally abuse me, and I went to bed, till I was like 8 years old, and and I discovered guilt and shame, and I lived in fear, I started being isolated at an early age, I remember sleeping over my friend's house, and I peed the bed, and I was like, oh shit, you know what I mean? They're gonna find out. He's gonna find out, and just the feelings, and so moved on, and we started drinking, and then then smoking weed, and it progressed, and using got me out of myself. You know what I mean? It got me out of my own head because I was suffering from that self-centeredness, that self-obsession, and I've learned for myself, that through doing some step work, that self-obsession is not a good thing, whether it's negative or positive, to think that I'm superior or inferior. And I always was self-obsessed in an inferior way. I never felt like I was, better than anyone. I always felt like I was less, never felt equal. And, and that led to me, the kids in grade school were using, and they were taking pills, and I didn't really feed into that, was drinking but then started smoking weed. First time I smoked weed, I got sick as a dog, threw up, crazy, was like nodding like I was on dope or something, the big kids, the older kids, we was in a 63 Falcon, and and it was fun to get the younger kids and burn them out. You know what I mean? Just keep passing the weed, And I went home and I threw up and was totally out of it, And I did it again, But when my disease started progressing, like I was a chunky kid, and I would my brother and sister, they would call me a fat faggot. They said, "You fat faggot." And then they started, and so then like it was in the 70s, and a lot of women were taking a lot of diet pills. You know what I mean? Mother's little helpers, and so using started to become the solution, and the word was that you didn't eat and you would lose weight, and you got high off of them, so a friend of mine, he had his mother was going to one of these doctors, and he knew, we set it up, and doctor was on vacation, and I ended up with a lot of pills, and I figured, if I could just change the outside, that everything would be good, if I could just lose some weight, you know what I mean, that I would be totally happy, and these drugs had side effects, so like at 14, 15 years old, I was strung out. You know what I mean? I was strung out, didn't sleep for days, and, the hallucinations and the paranoias, and my body started to deteriorate, and I was like skin and bones, and my teeth started, going bad and you know, and all that. And that was like at 14. You know, but you know, I used to live and live to use. You know, drug using was always a solution. You know, and I substituted. You know, and I stopped using this and started using that and this, that, and the other thing. You know, and I justified and rationalized. You know, I can remember going to the methadone clinic and thinking, well, I'm not as bad as those people. I still have a job. You know. I got a job. I'm not this. I'm not that. You know, and so I came into NA. You know what I mean? And you know, and the literature came to life for me. You know, just reading the readings. You know, who was an addict. You know, and I felt like I belonged. You know, for the first time in my life. You know, I felt like I had come home. You know, and it wasn't easy in the beginning, you know, I was on, you know, they call it drug replacement therapy now. You know, I was on maintenance, you know, methadone maintenance, and I couldn't stop, and I was scared, you know, and I did, I did like 290 and 90s, you know, using, and you know, I was that guy that was nodding, you know. Burning myself with the cigarette, spilling my coffee, totally whacked, you know, and I stayed, you know. Thank God for that third tradition, man. You know, that we don't throw people out. We can't, you know, regardless, you know, of how many times somebody goes out and comes back, you know, that there's always a seat, you know, here at Narcotics Anonymous, you know. Because, you know, it's my experience that, you know, like, you know, and I came in and I did 290s using, and by the miracle, you know, you all taught me how to get clean. You know, how to pray to have the obsession relieved, you know. And people reached out to me, you know, and I was being 12-stepped and I didn't even know it. You know what I mean? I used to, you know, I would go to meetings and say, after the meeting, I'd say, well, I need a ride home, you know what I mean? And, you know, and people would reach out, you know, and share their experience, strength, and hope with me. And it was like, it was such an amazing thing, you know, and, you know, like I started to feel like people really cared, you know what I mean? Because I got a lot of sideways looks, you know what I mean, when I would use and go to meetings in like 87. Not too many people had a lot of clean time, and people didn't understand, you know, that you could, you know, if you relapsed, that you still had another shot to start all over again, you know. And like, you know, the literature says, we look at, you know, that view is too limited, you know, to look at, you know, relapse as a sign of total failure, you know, and a lot of clean time is a sign of total success, you know, and, you know, that for myself, you know, I don't believe that, you know, because it goes on to say that, you know, the addicts with a lot of clean time can still live in dishonesty and deceit, you know what I mean, and haven't gone through that transformation that the steps bring, you know, but that's neither here nor there, you know, you know, I started to, you know, and in a nutshell, you know, I got clean, I got arrogant, I got cocky, and you couldn't teach me nothing. I was unteachable. You know, I thought I got clean, I'll never use again. I got mine, you got yours, and I thought being in recovery was going to a meeting and try to share some good shit, you know what I mean, that I made up in my head, you know, maybe trying to repeat something that I heard or whatever, you know, and sponsorship was out the door. My first sponsor didn't return a phone call. I was like, fuck that, sponsorship don't work, and I proceeded to do it on my own, and I used in a dentist's office with a legal prescription, and I learned how dangerous it can be for an addict. They can have a bottle of pills in their hand, in my hand, you know, regardless if it's legal or illegal. You know, I was just telling a friend of mine last week who had surgery. I said, there's something about when I got the bottle of pills in my hand that 2 pills can fall out instead of 1. You know what I mean? There's always that possibility, you know. So I try to stay vigilant, you know. But so in a nutshell, I was arrogant, cocky, couldn't teach me nothing. I used, you know, and then I came back with resentments, blah blah blah, struggled, and at the end of the road, you know. But like it says in Who Was an Addict, you know, along the way, you know, like I said, you know, even as a little kid before I started using, I was a sneak. I learned how to lie, cheat, and steal without regard for anyone, you know. But using was just like accelerated that process, you know. And in the end, you know, I was that drug crazed junkie that was robbing convenience stores, you know, to get another hit, you know. And that was the end of my road, you know. And I got rescued, you know, and you know, my daughter was my ride or die, you know what I mean? She was like 5 years old when I got clean the first time, and she was like 12, 13 when I relapsed, and then she rode with me, you know, through my relapses and stuff, and you know, and so at the end of the, you know, when I got rescued, like I was in the jail cell in Summers Point, and you know, they had found out, my mom and my daughter had found out what I was, you know, that I was locked up, you know, and they came down to see me in the jail cell. And by then, you know, and I'll never forget that picture. My mother was just like looking at me like, "You crazy much?" She didn't say a word, you know what I mean? She just looked at me and rolled her eyes. She was just like, you know, people have said, you know, I thought my name was you know, and she just looked, and her, I just, you know, and my daughter was hysterical. She was like, "Dad, what happened? What happened? You know, I just seen you yesterday, you know," and so like, you know, but my plan was, you know, after this robbery, you know, I was going to have my daughter, like, put me in the trunk of her car, you know, and drive me out of town, and I was going to make her an accomplice to the crime that I had just committed, you know what I mean? And, like, how fucked up is that, you know what I mean? But that just sounded like a good idea, you know what I mean? Like, how do I get out of town? She'll help me, you know, I wasn't thinking, you know, like, well, she's going to go to jail too, you know. And so anyway, that was the end of the road, and you know, so I did my time, and I was thinking, like, why am I locked up? And everybody else that, you know, listened and followed direction and surrendered, you know, to the program, and you know, got honest and wrote steps with a sponsor. Like, everybody's out, you know, doing that, having fun, living life, you know. And here I am, trays up, count up. You know what I mean? Meds up, you know, the whole nine, you know, yard up, you know, commissary up, you know, and so I had a lot of time to think about it, you know, and so when I came out, I surrendered, you know, and I got a sponsor, and, you know, and he gave me some step work. He gave me a pen. He said, "This pen will write in outer space. It'll write underwater. It'll write anywhere." You know what I mean? And you know what he was telling me, you know what I mean? And, you know, so I got to work. And, you know, at the time, you know, I was working out of town. I was traveling a lot, riding the bus 4 hours a day, you know, up to Camden, back to Summers Point, you know. I was riding the bus like 4 hours a day, you know, and working too. And I couldn't make a lot of meetings, you know. But I kept that step work on the table. You know what I mean? And I did my step work on a regular basis, and I started developing a relationship with a sponsor. And I love you, Deb. You know, I'll never forget. You know, people share things in meetings, you know what I mean? And it could be 5 years ago, it could be 20 years ago. And I remember you sharing, Deb, in a meeting one night, like, "You want to do something good for yourself? Sit at home tonight," you know what I mean? Sit down with your step work, you know what I mean? And get in touch with the God of your understanding, and do that for yourself, you know what I mean? And I'll never forget that, you know what I mean? And I was like, all right, I love that lady. Deb's the bomb. And yeah, so and I started to recover, and I started to learn about the symptoms of the disease. You know what I mean? Not just using drugs. You know what I mean? The symptoms, the justification, the rationalization, the guilt, the embarrassment, the self-centeredness, and getting into that first step, and for me, the truth is that restoration, talking about, how, I can justify the most outrageous sort of nonsense in order to justify, the mess, that I make. And I found that to be true, not just with drugs, but with other behaviors. You know what I mean? I found myself acting out on behaviors and being powerless, over things that other behaviors, whatever your flavor is, you know what I mean? Whatever you like to do that takes me out of myself, and makes me feel good, and I started going deeper, and the step process, and like we talk about, honesty is the antidote, and so I had to, and I developed a relationship with a sponsor, and I could go to him and be honest and tell him about how I was really living. You know what I mean? The things that I was doing and how I was feeling, and he walked me through it. And I started to, because it says we take a look at our thinking, and I started to realize, that I would justify and rationalize. What if only, just one more time, you know what I mean? Whatever. The rationalization might be, but then after, I would get that crash, and it would be like, and I started like getting in touch with my thinking, with the inner dialogue, that because I was so detached from myself, from my own thinking, that I just ran on impulse, you know what I mean? Whatever looked good, felt good, and I justified it, but. As I stayed clean, it started to become more clearer how I would mentally abuse myself, you know what I mean, and belittle myself, for my behavior, and I would tell my things like, you're a fucking idiot, you know what I mean, you're stupid, you fucking did it again, and I was stuck in that sixth step, acting out on my defects of character, and so I got tired of and I just gave myself a break and stopped doing stopped trying to do it. I just didn't stop it right away, but I started to see that cycle. You know what I mean? Of like we talk about that vicious cycle of using self-hatred. You know what I mean? A period of relief, justify, rationalize, using self-hatred, you know what I mean? And it was like a cycle, and, but, I was being restored to sanity in the process, you know what I mean? We talk about progress, not perfection, and so I just wasn't acting out as much, and it got, I started to recognize the symptoms when they started coming up, and through the step process, how much time I got? 3 minutes? 12? What, I got to say a half hour? Jesus Christ. All right, so the vicious cycle, of using self-hatred, and but in the process, like sometimes, I would find myself taking 3 steps up, 2 steps back, you know what I mean? 3 steps up, maybe 1 step back, and so I've gotten a little bit better, a lot better. I'm not going to say a little bit. I've gotten a lot better, and the pandemic helped me so much. You know what I mean? and I was allowed to expand, you know what I mean, my go all over, and find, different people and do service in different areas, and just to feel a part of, and I learned so much, more about myself and the steps, in that process, and like I said, that I could never feel connected, you know what I mean? Like we say, the disease of addiction is very isolation and alienation, the symptom, never feeling a part of, and just through the step process, because I had lost the ability to care about anybody, myself, my daughter, like I said, I wanted my daughter to be a, co-defendant, co-conspirator. Put me in a trunk and ride me out of town, like that shit's normal, and so I've developed, you know what I mean, I was shown the love and the acceptance, by other addicts, and people like my sponsor, that reached out to me and shared his experience, and I started to change on the inside. I started to think, more about others. You know what I mean? I was going through that process, so I was thinking about, trying to understand rather than be understood. And I don't know how, that works, but, the condition of my heart started to change, and I was being healed internally, and so like, I could, instead of recognizing my own selfish needs, I could look at other people's needs, My mom's like 92 now, and like I said, she looked at me and rolled her eyes and said, "This crazy motherfucker," you know what I mean? And, so as I, stayed in recovery and didn't use, I started to look at my mom, because my mom gave me a parole address, in spite of everything I did, to my mom. I robbed, cheated, and stole, and she had to go to see a therapist, you know what I mean, to deal with the shit that I was putting her through, and so like but she still gave me a parole address, and she showed me that unconditional love, and that's where I started, doing my step work on her kitchen table, and I left it on the table, you know what I mean? She can read it if she wants, but I hadn't gotten to a fourth step yet. But anyway, so like, that was a few years ago, and, I started, I going through the step process, and I wanted to make some amends, and, like, before I wanted my daughter to put me in the trunk, and ride me out of town, like I had robbed her. I knew she had $100 in her purse. I knew she had it, because I seen her open the purse and I seen that $100 bill. And so, like that night, I crept in. I broke into my mom's house and I crept into the room where she was sleeping, and I took that $100, And she told me, she said, "Dad, somebody fucking robbed me at work. They stole my $100 out of my purse." And I was like, "Damn, that's fucked up." You know what I mean? And I felt so bad inside, And so I had been clean for a while, and I learned, something about making amends, without talking to a sponsor, and I got this bright idea, without writing an 8th step or talking to my sponsor, going over that 8th step, or getting ready to do a 9th step, I thought I could do it on my own, and the results were disastrous, you know what I mean? So, yeah, if you're ready to make some amends, you know what I mean, talk to your sponsor first, and if you don't have a sponsor, get one and then talk to them about it, But I had been clean for a while, and I still didn't really understand all the harm that I had done. All the emotional harm. And what I started to realize that because my relationship with my daughter, like when I came home from jail, like she was a grown woman. You know what I mean? Had her own house. I had 2 granddaughters that I didn't even know. They were born when I was locked up, and a lot of things had changed. And she had grown up, and I started to realize that. Let me know when I got like 2 minutes.
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay. And I started to realize, that she was recovering too. You know what I mean? And I had to give her a break. You know what I mean? And I'm not one of those addicts, that thinks like everybody, to roll out the red carpet for me because I'm clean. You know what I mean? And all. I knew there was, there was that wreckage in between us where we, and so like we say, one of the best ways we can make amends is just by staying clean and showing up, and so I've been given, and it was tough, because my ego told me, that I still wanted to be a good dad, and I didn't realize this is a grown-ass woman with 2 kids, you know what I mean? She don't need you to tell her how to run her fucking life anymore, you know what I mean? And so there was a lot of tension in our relationship. We couldn't have a conversation without me telling her, yeah, you need to make them kids clean the house and make them do the laundry and teach them how to vacuum and, but I was always telling her what to do, and it came to a head one day when I was helping her move and nothing was ready. You got 2 teenage girls and nothing's packed, nothing's ready, and I told my daughter, I said, these fucking kids are fucking lazy. You know what I mean? And they fucking flipped out on me. They fucking started throwing shampoo bottles at me. My one granddaughter said, fuck you, Grandpa. Why don't you go shoot some dope? You know what I mean? Like, we know your fucking story. We know who you are. They never saw me use, but they knew. You know what I mean? From what their mother had told them. You know what I mean? And like that was just what I needed. You know what I mean? I needed that shot of humility. You know what I mean? Of humiliation. You know what I mean? Because like I'm, and I realized today it was like an ego thing. You know what I mean? If I could tell you what to do, how to raise your kids, and then your kids are doing it, I must be, you know what I mean, a good dad or whatever. Some kind of crazy shit. You know what I mean? I don't know. But so like, I can get out of myself. You know what I mean? I can get out of myself by helping somebody else. You know what I mean? And and with my mom, my mom's like 92 now, and like my mom worked hard all her life, 50 years as a waitress. You know what I mean? And I started looking at my mom, and I'm like, she lives on the 2nd floor. You know what I mean? And I started telling her, you need a stair lift. Because I tried to get her to move downstairs. We'll hook it up, we'll make it nice, big screen TV, walk-in shower, the whole 9. Yeah, okay. And then when it came time, she was like, I ain't fucking moving downstairs. I was like, okay, so we're going to get you a stair lift. I don't need a stair lift. I said, well, it'll be nice, you know what I mean? I said, well, I don't give a fuck. You're going to get it anyway. We'll take you out to lunch and you'll have a stair lift when you get back. And if you want to use it, use it. If you don't, don't. And she loves her stair lift, man. She loves her stair lift. She wants to be like a representative, you know what I mean? For a stair lift company. Tell them how good the stair lift is, And my mom is like a soldier, She like, I got her little car, you know what I mean? And I go, take care of, and like, like, I got a bird feeder in my backyard. And like, you know, like I ran out of birdseed today. You know, I got the Cardinals and the Blue Jays and the Squirrels, and I love to watch them, you know, coming, you know, and it just feels good, man. I'm helping feed the birds, you know what I mean? And so I ran out of birdseed, and I was like, I got to go to Home Depot, you know what I mean, get some more birdseed, you know. And I was like, well, I'm running short, I'll go in the morning, you know what I mean? But like, you know, so like, I'm just blessed, man, and you know, but you know, the bottom line is staying clean. You know what I mean? Staying clean. You know, they told me stay clean, stay in position, get honest. You know what I mean? You can't save your ass in your face at the same time. You know, and you know, get a sponsor and get a relationship with a sponsor. You know what I mean? And you know, it's made all the difference in the world. Thanks for letting me share.
Thanks for sharing.